There we are. It's part 6. Now we're still in chapter 4, tissue, histology, page 133. We were up to the dense, regular and irregular connective tissue, and I mentioned to you before that this particular tissue here, the dense, irregular, I'm going to be testing you on this, and it's going to be the intervertebral disc that has the well, it's actually going to have fibrocartilage, but there's going to be regions of muscle that reach into. Yeah, we'll get into that in certain ways. So let's move on to the cartilage. Actually, here that's the next thing. Not quite the next thing. It turns out that we do have a very special feature. We're not going to visit it until we get to the second semester of our course and we look at blood vessels. But the very first blood vessel that we have is an ascending aorta and the aortic arch. And then we have some branches coming off. And this portion of our anatomy turns out to be very balloon-like and very elastic. Okay, and we can see all this elastic tissue through here. You see it? So it's interspersed with smooth muscle. And the deal here is that this can actually balloon open, increase its volume a little bit, and then it will recoil closed. So the idea here is that the heart is going to send out at rest a large volume of blood every second, and then rest every second, and then rest. Lub, dub, dub. Right, and so the idea here is that we're going to be sending out volumes of blood, which will then cause this to expand, and then there's going to be a recoil. That recoil, that ability to expand and then recoil, is going to maintain a smooth flow and delivery of blood through the vascular system here, the arterial system. So that's why it's there. Okay, we are kind of a tall building. And we always have to be careful with plumbing in tall buildings because there's pressures at the place where the pump is, and then you get pretty far away, and there's other problems that go along with the plumbing. So being slightly on the short side and slender side actually makes people a little bit more efficient in their cardiovascular systems. Okay, being tall or being overweight can be a challenge for these things. We're moving on now to our cartilage, hyaline. Okay, so cartilage now is a slightly different format because while we still are looking at this cell matrix, fibers, and ground substance thing now, with cartilage we're going to go to a solid ground substance. And the fibers are going to be more definitive and simple, particularly here in the hyaline cartilage. Let's take a look at hyaline cartilage. Where do we find it? We find it in the costal ribs area. That we connect our ribs to the sternum with costal cartilage. You can tap actually right on your trachea. For those who have an Adam's apple, that's hyaline cartilage. For those who lack an Adam's apple and have a higher pitched voice, you can still feel cartilage at the anterior of your neck because our trachea is made out of little C-sections of cartilage. And then there's the knuckles of your hands. So if you make a fist and you feel the knuckles or the bones of your hand meeting up with the bones of your fingers, they're going to, where they bend, they're going to be having some hyaline cartilage because it's also the cartilage of articulation. Okay, so you can see here we have, these are not osteoblasts. They were osteoblasts when they were out here. So I've made a little notation. This is an osteoblast and it's laying down the matrix. And then once it gets caught in the matrix, have you ever tried to paint the floor of a room and you didn't leave a pathway to the door, so you couldn't make your way out. So you just basically painted yourself into a room. That's kind of what they've done here, is they've sort of painted themselves into a room. and they have sort of a suspended animation, as it were. But they're there. These little areas here are called lacunas, and Lacuna, a lacuna. Did they say that here? Yes, chondrocyte in a lacuna. Okay, so we've gone from the word chondroblast to the word chondrocyte. It's a cell, but it's not actively laying down matrix, so we switch it from blast to cyte. Okay, it's living in a little opening called a lacuna. Here we have glassy, kind of see-through, slightly transparent connective tissue that's solid. And of course, as an articular surface, it's very nice because it means that the bones can move smoothly across each other. So the ends of bones where they meet other ends of bones, like your knees, for instance, or the joints of your fingers, where they're going to meet other bones, they have this nice, smooth, slippery, glassy connective tissue here, the hyaline cartilage, that's going to be able to smoothly move the joints. That's the whole point of that. And it's always good to have a little yoga or dance or whatever activity you like to have in order to keep your joints nice and smooth. And you don't want to have any sort of buildup that would limit the smoothness or range of motion of your joints. Okay, coming down here, we have something elastic going on. We have an ear. In most cases, if you bend your ear, especially take the pinna and bend it forward, or take the tragus over here and bend it in over the ear canal, they will just simply snap back into the position. You have to be careful. There are wrestlers who experience cauliflower ear because they have done something a little too rigorous to the ear, that it doesn't quite make it back to its original format. But in general, we have these elastic fibers in here, and that's what they're attempting to do, is they're attempting to provide bendability, as it were, or flexibility, and then being able to elastically recoil and snap back into position. That would be the ideal situation. So be careful of your ears. Don't put too much pressure on them, but generally speaking, they will, in fact, recoil back into their original position. We call this connective tissue a cartilage, but it is elastic cartilage. Okay, so here we have hyaline cartilage, here we have elastic cartilage, and now we're going to move on to where we find our vertebral discs. I had warned you that we're going to have something fibrous going on with the intervertebral discs, and that's right here. There's often some other tissues associated with that, and again, they've used this strange little stain here. So I'm not really happy with that because I would like you to see that something consistent going on. At any rate, we do have here what we would be referring to as fibrocartilage. There's two areas of fibrocartilage that I test you on. One is the intervertebral disc, and the type of joint that we have here is referred to as a symphysis. And then at the front of the pelvis, at the very front, are the two pubic bones that come together to form the pelvic girdle, and they're held together also by fibrocartilage. And that would also be something that would be called a symphysis. In fact, it's called the pubic symphysis, and it's held together by fibrocartilage. Okay, so fibrocartilage is useful in a number of other areas. It would be useful where we have a meniscus, and that's the area of the knee in which we've created a certain amount of depth on the top of the tibia by extending the articular surface with a little bit of cartilage, giving it a lip, as it were, so that things can fit deeply in there. We're not going to get too much into bone. Here we have cooked out bone, and the more or less the soft tissues are missing. There would normally be an artery, a vein, and a nerve in here. There would be cells in here, but here we've had something that's been fully cooked out, and it's characteristic. Normally there would be osteocytes living here, but we're going to be taking this up as a tissue in the future. So look forward to that. The same thing with blood cells here. We have a blood smear. We have red blood cells. We have some platelets right there. We have a little lymphocyte, and we have something here called a neutrophil. So those are some of the more common features of blood, and we'll get more into that next semester.